Well, let me start by thanking everybody for logging in to the webinar. It's much appreciated. And like we said earlier, we know that folks are joining us from all over the United States. And in some cases, I think one or two of you might even be international. So we really appreciate it. And I'm going to start by introducing Tiffany. Tiffany Nguyen is one of the co-founders of Astro Dental. And when she got out of school with her MBA, she began to specialize in dental software, specifically cloud-related dental software. She is incredibly smart and one of the forces behind, I think, the amazing product that we're going to take a little peek at as we move through the presentation. And she has taught me quite a bit. I'm very appreciative of the knowledge that she's imparted. And so I feel very fortunate to have you along as my co-host tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Ken. I think practice management software makes a lot of sense for me because I grew up in a family of dental, and I think you did too, right?
I did. Born and raised into, I have a father who's an oral surgeon, uncle, grandfather was a dentist, cousin is a dentist. So I have a lot of dental influence that pretty much greeted me as I as I came into the world. So, been around it most of my life.
Yeah, so it makes sense for you too. I see with the dental practice management software and being a consultant since 1985, that gives you a ton of experience. I'm sure you've been privy to seeing a lot of trends come and go when it comes to computers and technology and how dental offices work and will be working into the future. I think with that experience and with what you've seen regarding Mac software and Mac practice, dental Mac, all of those years lend to a very valuable set of knowledge that you'll be sharing with us tonight. So everyone, you are in fantastic hands for your webinar host today with Mr. Ken Kingsbury.
Wow, well, thank you. I appreciate that. So we're going to start out with this first slide. The times they are changing. And yeah, that little guy on the left there is the original Mac Plus computer. And when I started in 1985, that is the computer that I was bringing out to dental offices, medical and dental offices, and presenting practice management software. I get a kick out of it just because the times really have changed over the years. And back in those days, this computer didn't even have an internal hard drive. You had to boot up on a little floppy. I had a little 10 megabyte hard drive that I brought along with me. And I could tell you a million stories, especially when I would forget that floppy and have to drive all the way back to the office to get it. But that's where it started. When I was in that arena, literally there, probably less than 20% of offices at that point had any sort of a computer system. So it was just beginning. That first ADA that I worked at the Moscone Center in San Francisco, I probably had 50, 60 doctors at any time deep in that booth, very curious. And so it's been a beautiful journey through the years. And we're going to talk today a lot about specifically why I feel after all this time that cloud is definitely the way to go. And I realize that some of you on this presentation today may have already made a conclusion that you're ready to leave your server-based technology and move on. And so if at any time you're wanting to maybe get more into the details of a cloud dental software program, want to have specific questions, you might want to get a presentation, just use the Q&A or the chat box and let us know, and we'll make sure we follow up right away. At the same time, at the end of this presentation, we're going to have a Q&A, live Q&A. So we really appreciate if you put your questions in at any time, and we're going to be happy to have Tiffany bring those questions up live and answer those as we move through. So let's start with this. This may seem a little bit obvious that the world runs on the cloud, but it indeed does. I can't think of any major corporation out there that isn't cloud-based. Almost all the things that I use, from banking, even as I put together my music playlists on Apple Music or on Pandora, everything is cloud-based. In fact, this presentation on Zoom is cloud-based. This has been the trend now for a while. It wasn't that long ago that I was actively selling server-based software, and for a while even competing against and speaking against the idea of cloud. But this movement and this trend has just been something that would be almost impossible to ignore. And so there's going to be certain points that I try to make throughout that may repeat themselves because I feel like they're really important. So one of the quotes that I pulled off that I wanted to just read really quickly, which I think is a really important aspect of getting onto the cloud. And this was just a quote that I got. You don't have a full-time security person, meaning you and I and our small businesses. You do not have a full-time security person who meets and collaborates with the CIA and the FBI on cyber terrorism and theft. You don't have people who run databases and systems for tens of thousands of customers doing millions of transactions a year. So we, as in the cloud systems, we hire those types of experts in the industry and bring them in to focus on securing and keeping your data private. So I'm going to, again, be re-emphasizing that, but I just want to say that I've worked for a long time in this business. I've known some great IT people. There is nobody who can measure up to the type of people that are being hired by the Microsoft Azures, the AWS, Amazon Web Services. And that is, I think, like the most amazing insight that I got was that when you bring on a good cloud-based system, you're not just getting the dental software, you're not just getting that particular company, you're getting the entire organization behind that. All of these big Fortune 500 companies that have hired these same organizations have done their due diligence. They know the types of expertise they're getting, and this comes along as something that I just want to emphasize as being incredibly important piece that sometimes maybe gets overlooked. And the fact that in doing so that your data remains safe and sound. And what I mean by that is that these companies have to have your data HIPAA compliant. I know this is something that people bandy around a lot. They throw these terms out about HIPAA compliance. And sometimes software is, and sometimes it's not. And but most likely, as a doctor or staff in a practice, this HIPAA compliance becomes your problem if you are managing all that in-house. You become, and that by de facto, you become the sole entity responsible if you become, if there's a data breach or there becomes some issue that you have to deal with. And so by allowing this to be handled by these experts outside, you dilute that exposure quite a bit. And so, I don't need to rattle off all the different companies that are involved in having their businesses run by this, but I'm thankful that a lot of this has been handled by folks before I've been involved, or a software company has been involved, knowing that this stuff is safe and sound. The other piece that has always been a challenge one way or another has been the headaches that can come along, and they always do, with IT. And IT is going to be something that you have to deal with on so many levels. First of all, coming back to, let's say, a server-based system, you are responsible for getting that backed up. And I've seen, well, again, if I had lots of time here, I would tell you some some stories throughout the years, but I have seen backups that have failed for all kinds of reasons, hard drives that go bad, people that forget, think they're backing up the right data, but they're not. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So you got backups. You have a server that you have to maintain. These things suddenly become moot points when you're in the cloud. You no longer have to deal with that. When you have servers, you have operating systems. You got to keep the operating systems up to date. Then if you're server based, that means you're probably using third-party programs that take up space that you have to also manage and make sure that all these things are coordinating. It becomes a nightmare at some point. And if you're not hiring IT and you're trying to do it yourself, or you have a staff person that's doubling as an IT person, this is not something that I recommend. So what happens when you go cloud? First thing that you realize is that you're eliminating so much of that potential headache. And I can only tell you that it is just a load off the shoulders when that happens, that you don't have to worry about it. You've got these experts that are handling this. Just imagine for a moment, sometimes the headaches of updating your software, your dental software, making sure that you've got the proper amount of downtime coming in on the weekend. Boy, did I get the operating system right? Is there enough memory? So many factors. All this is being handled in the background. It's never going to interrupt or have an impact on your practice, et cetera. So these are all really, really important points to consider. Now, this may feel like all devices run in the cloud. Well, let's break that down so that we're really clear on what we mean by that. When I've represented in the past server-based software, oftentimes if I want to use other devices, those are not devices that actually run the program. Those are devices that might have an app that runs a specific part of the program. So now you're carrying around an iPad or a tablet that has certain things that it can access. And the phone typically doesn't even play a role in that at all. So the first thing it opens up is that all the devices, whether they're on the PC side or on the Mac side, are there for you to utilize. And one of the things that experiences that I've had throughout the years, well, I'll just give you an example of being a patient at Kaiser. Oftentimes I've gone in to get a medical examination, and because these guys are on this huge program called Epic with these large screens, which are great. I can travel from San Francisco, go up to see my sister in Santa Rosa, and I can go to a Kaiser and they have all my records. I love that. But invariably, they go like this when they're typing, when they're asking questions, going like this. So one of the advantages of being cloud is that you can take a device like an iPad or a tablet, hold that up, and do your process and your way of being with patients where you're not turning your back to them. And this is really a key point that I want to emphasize, because it's not a good patient experience if you're rattling around with technology and getting distracted or turning your back, et cetera. Now, I wish I could say that all cloud systems are developed in an equal way, but that is not the case. Sometimes you have cloud systems out there that only run on Google Chrome, or they may only run on tablets, but not on your iPhone or on your iPad. And what I've noticed is I've been in practices, even if I've been in a practice that's all PC, it's not untypical that the doctor has an iPhone or an iPad or a Mac at home. So you want to make sure that as you're evaluating cloud systems, that you make sure that they actually do indeed take advantage of running on any device that you might want to bring into the practice. So let's talk a little bit about paperless. Now, as we get further into the presentation, we're actually going to give you a peek at some of the functionality of a good dental cloud-based system. No secret that we're going to be showing a little bit of Aspra Dental, which I find to be an amazing product. But going paperless, boy, have I seen this get bungled up a lot, because you have paperless, maybe you have chartless, sometimes you call it contactless. There's all kinds of different names for it. But it's not untypical for people to send their consent forms or their health history to a patient who then downloads it as a PDF, fills it out, brings it back in. Then the office has to look at it, make sure it's all accurate, go to a scanner, scan it, go to their program, attach it, lots and lots of steps. Sometimes those steps are so cumbersome, people stay on paper. So a good cloud system is going to allow that entire process to be completely digital, seamless, and simple. And we're going to show you how that works in a moment. So going paperless with a good system and really paperless, you're going to find that it's going to open up a lot of additional time that usually gets very cumbersome in that process. And we'll talk, and I will continue to, as we move through, to emphasize some of these things. Now, no, that's not me. I wish it was, just sitting out somewhere, having a great old time. But the ability to remote in is like a no-brainer when you're on cloud. But if you're on a server, a lot of times that can become very, very challenging and slow, cumbersome. You're going through security to get in through your VPN that's in the office. You got to type in passwords to get through that. Then you got to get passwords to go into the program, etc. This is not something that typically is an easy process. So think about your remote access being from having a cup of coffee, being at home, being on vacation, and not having to go find a computer to do this, actually doing it from your phone, having access to the entire program, charts, chart notes, digital x-rays, everything, scheduling, being able to make appointments, whatever it happens to be, all that from any device, and what that opens up. And one of the things that I want to posit to all you guys that are listening is that this actually opens the door for maybe even a different way of evaluating the folks that are working in the office, because not everybody can be in the office all the time. There's a variety of reasons that someone may be away or can't get in all the time, and this then allows for someone to work remotely and very simply. You don't have to go out and buy them a special computer. They can access it from whatever they have. And so this really opens the doors. I can't even imagine the kind of talent that could be available through that process. The other piece that I've come up against as a practice management consultant is sometimes offices, either through success or the idea of expanding, they start to think about multiple locations, and this becomes very daunting. Because again, if you're server based, the idea that you're going to run multiple locations from one server almost becomes either impossible, or the amount of money you have to spend on getting special kinds of fiber optic technology in there to make it actually function. So what typically happens is you got to buy multiple programs. That's costly. Then you've got reports and you've got scheduling, you've got all kinds of things that are happening now that are separate. You got to figure out how to combine those things. This can be incredibly off-putting about doing anything like that. So when we talk about adding multiple locations, we're also talking about even just adding more users in one practice, and how simple that is. You're not having to buy licenses and go out and make sure your server now gets upgraded in order to handle what was 5 workstations, which is now 10. Once you're on the cloud, it could be 5, it could be 10, it could be 100, and there's no impact on speed, and there's no need to worry about a server driving that. So just begin to really feel into what that can open up, whether it's separate location, or whether or not it's just more users within the one location. Then when you think about increasing the value of your practice, I mean, I guess I just have to speak really plainly here. And this is, and I just had a conversation with one of my clients that I've had for a long time, who's on, older computers in the office, can't upgrade the program, all kinds of hassles. And they're thinking about retirement. They're thinking about bringing on associates. This is not oftentimes a very attractive part of selling the practice. So the value from just getting modern with your approach, and modern meaning that you're getting on the cloud, you're starting to take advantage of that technology, of the programming and the expertise that's going into that, and all the functionality that comes. And so you're increasing value through that piece. You're increasing value through the patient experience by using technology that's appropriate for your patient encounters, et cetera. There's just a lot of ways that begins to show up. By the way, I'm noticing that questions are coming in, and really appreciate. Send as many as you like, and we're going to try to get to those as we move through. So saving time, saving money. I can remember conversations that I've had over the years with programmers. Programmers don't necessarily always get it, right? They don't get the dental practice. They're kind of into, oh, that's a cool feature. And I can remember one programmer saying to me one day, well, what's the difference if it takes 2 clicks or it takes 5 clicks? Well, I bet you there's not a single person on this webinar that doesn't immediately kind of cringe a little bit when that's said, because the difference between 2 clicks and 5 clicks can mean 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, more a day in processing and doing things. So when you save time, you're saving money. And when you save money, the flip side of that becomes more time that your team can spend with patients in the kind of ways that a computer will never be able to handle. So we're trying to point out and give you tips and tools through a good system that's going to free up the kind of time that oftentimes the bottlenecks in an office can just make almost impossible. Okay. So there are a lot of interpretations of what new features can create the modern workflow. There isn't anybody out there developing in a serious way for server-based technology. They may be continuing to develop because they have customers and they're doing their best, but everybody out there that is evolving in technology is developing for the web, for the cloud. That's just it. That's just a fact. And everybody, if they're not developing specifically for that, they're developing apps that work on your mobile devices and on your computers that support those programs, taking up less bandwidth, less hassle. All these things are being tested behind the scenes, so you don't have to worry about all these different programs that you might be using currently, whether you're on a Mac or you're on a PC. And so creating these workflows, these modern workflows, these new features, they are just going to be more cutting edge because that is where programming is focused and directed. And we're going to show you here, just as we move out of the screen, we're going to show you a little bit about how that works. And I'm going to let Tiffany come in and walk you through a few things. So again, I just want to emphasize that, modern these days is cloud. There is no twisting that around. And at the same time, you want to certainly evaluate your cloud system to make sure that they're actually doing the things that they say they're going to do. And let's move in here to the screen. So we're going to, in a moment, I'm going to let Tiffany come in and just take you through a couple of parts of the experience of paperless and just how easy that is. And this is where I get excited as a consultant, because these are the pieces oftentimes that can be really laborious trying to handle. So Tiffany, I'll let you come in here.
All right, before we press play on these screen videos, I wanted to bring the context back to how are we doing consent forms right now. In a lot of practices, we still hear front office having to print out the consent forms. The patients will sign them. Front office will scan this form into the patient's chart and upload it into the practice management software. So while this only takes, I don't know, 30 seconds to a few minutes per patient, when you have 10 patients, 20 patients a day, it really does start to add up and pile in, because you have to upload everything to the right patient's chart and organize it. So what I'm about to show you here is a new potential workflow where you can send the patient their consent forms ahead of time, which will decrease the in-office wait time. And then it will also show you how everything is automatically filed into the patient's chart, so that it eliminates the extra printing and scanning time that's taken. So Ken, if you can play the video on the left, here is in the practice. If we have a consent form that we're trying to send to a patient, let's do a COVID screening, and perhaps a fillings consent form. All of the consents are editable. You can upload your own, and then you can customize any note sections, for example, adding in a tooth number. Now here we're going to send it to the patient's email. And once the patient has received their form and signed it, on the patient's documents tab, everything gets filed in real time as a PDF with the patient's signature. So as you can see here, that took care of the printing, scanning, uploading process. And if the patient still wants a copy, you can either send them a PDF or print it out for them.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that that actually wasn't a sleight of hand. As soon as a patient clicks complete, when they're done, it is immediately, and I mean immediately, in that patient's file back at the office. There isn't like it has to go to some place and you have to download it and then attach it. It is immediate. This is phenomenal. I mean, this is really, it's a, yeah.
Oh, thank you. On the patient's perspective, what the patient sees as soon as the office clicks that send to email button is this email and their consent form. So in their email, there's a link. And if you press play on this video here, all the patient has to do is click on that secure link, and it'll take them directly to a place where they can fill out their signatures for these consent forms. Read through, see the note for number 3 is there where the practice wrote it, and then confirm. And the confirmation page means that these forms were filed in to the patient's chart in the practice management system. And that is I would say, one click process to send out the forms to the patient. Click send to email, and then the rest of it is in their hands. So nothing for the patient either. We see a lot of practices try to circumvent the having the forms filled out in practice by having the patients fill them out online, by printing out the forms on paper from the practice's website sometimes. So rather than put that burden on your patients where they have to print it out, another thing to consider is that not many people may have printers in their homes personally these days. So removing that step where the patient can just go straight through their email makes it a lot easier and faster.
Yeah, and just a quick emphasis, and then we're going to move on to some more examples here. This, I mean, we're giving you an example of getting that email and probably filling it out at home, but this could be anywhere. This could be anywhere. They could be traveling, they could be on their way, they could be having a cup of coffee, or they could be already at the practice. It's not, this opens up the door for a lot of flexibility in this. So let's move on to the next slide.
All right, here we're going to show you the patient intake form. So on the last video that you saw, that was the consent form. Here's the patient intake form, meaning it's the profile information, address, which is very important for setting insurance claims because we need the patient's address, health information, allergies, conditions, things like that. And these things are fantastic for the provider to know beforehand. If the patient's able to fill out this form before they come in, that way the provider can review everything. If the patient needs a pre-med, if there's anything that the provider thinks will need more time, then that can be taken care of at the booking or addressed before the patient comes in and tells the doctor for the first time. So here is, if you press play, this is from the patient's perspective. There's a link to their email, and same thing, secured link. Now the patient can fill in their own information. This also decreases a lot of data entry error, because if you're having the patient fill out a physical form by hand and having the front office copy that into the computer, there can be misreadings of writing and handwriting. And here you can see you choose any condition on the previous page, allergies here. You have to click none or choose an allergy or condition. And that is a liability thing for the practice as well, to make sure that patients aren't just breezing through and missing questions. So here at the end of the health screening, there's a signature and save. Now that is all that the patient does. On the practice's perspective, on the next screen, thanks, Ken. Here back in the office, we're going to show you what the office needs to do in order to send the patient that link in the email from the last screen. So if you click play here, all you do is from the patient's profile, click send patient info, and that's it. And once they have filled out their information, you'll go to the health history tab right here and see the last updated date and all of the conditions and allergies that the patient submitted themselves. And down here, their signature. And then back on the profile page, you can see here the address is populated, what the patient typed as well.
Wow, that's simple. That's for sure. Great.
Yeah, we're trying to decrease steps. And then the last example of a modern workflow that Ken is going to tell us about here, this is not necessarily regarding a paperless workflow. It's more about just the modern way of running a dental practice and being able to have a smooth workflow from front office, from back to front, and being able to see all of your clinical information in one page and access it a lot more quickly than we had the technological ability to 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize before Tiffany goes on that I'm pretty sure that this may be the only program you're about to see what we're going to show you. And this is just a huge, phenomenal piece that they've developed here. So here we go.
So here we're creating a progress note on this procedure and clicking complete. There is a template note. We'll fill in any information and type in any notes regarding the appointment. Let's say the patient chipped her tooth on an almond. And then we can save the note. Now, what if the patient's been coming in for years and years, and you don't remember exactly which tooth it was that this happened with, and so you only remember that she chipped it on an almond? Well, here by typing in the search query, you can find that document or progress note with the word almond in it. Another example, maybe the patient chipped it while she was on vacation. So we'll type in vacation and it'll filter down the note for you with that word in it. Just like the way we can search in our phones, in our emails, in pretty much anything that we're using as a consumer, now you can do that in your professional workflow as well. And this helps especially for the providers who are great at writing their notes and who have years and years of patient history and want to be able to find information really quickly without having to click on each note and open it to read and scan through what's in it. So that will decrease your computer screen time and allow you to spend more face-to-face time with the patient who's in the operatory.
Yeah, that is such an awesome feature. I can't tell you how many times that has been requested. Matter of fact, I just got a request from somebody on another system, and it's just not something that's either simple, going through all the charts, the cumbersomeness of looking, and here, one little quick note, and you've got them right there in front of you. It's an amazing function. So thank you, Tiffany. So we went a little over the 30 minutes, and I apologize for that, but really wanted to emphasize and also give you a little peek. So I've been in this business. I guess I have to say it one more time. It always makes me feel a little bit old, but I've been doing it for over 35 years. I'm happy to take a 30-minute Zoom call with you or a phone call and speak to you as a consultant. Look at what you're doing in your current practice, what your objectives are, answer questions. So please feel free to contact me, and my information there is at the bottom. The other thing I want to let you guys know is that we're going to be, the next webinar we're doing is going to be going into more detail on this whole paperless aspect of the program. And we've got some really interesting offers along that line that I think you might be interested in, that we can emphasize. So you can call, you can send a chat, email, etc. And we're all here. We want to hear from you, and really appreciate it. Now, before we finish here, like we said, we've got some questions that have been stacking up inside the chat, and so we're going to let Tiffany live on the spot. I love it. You're on the spot, Tiffany.
No pressure, Ken.
No pressure. Look at those questions and answer them for you. And if we don't get the chance to get to every single question on there, we will reach out specifically to you and get that answered. Take it away, Tiffany.
All right, I see a lot of questions here about other parts of the software. So our apologies for not having enough time to show you everything like we would on a full demo, but we thought these were the highlights. So a few of the questions here are, is there texting in the system? And do I pay separate for the texting option? So the answer, twofold, two questions here. Yes, there is a texting option. And what we're really excited about though is in our two-way messaging, there's also the ability to send pictures. I know there are a lot of companies out there that have text messaging that's only text. Make sure if you're looking at a program, of course, AsperDental is wonderful, but any good modern cloud software should be able to send pictures back and forth to your patients as well via text. And why this is important, we see a lot of practices where if patients can text in a picture of an area of concern, let's say they have a sore or maybe a chipped tooth or maybe a stain that they're not sure might be a cavity. These things, if they're sent in advance, the provider can triage and plan for the appointment prior to the patient coming in. Another important one is sending in insurance cards so that you don't have a patient coming in who's giving you their medical card instead of their dental card, and things like that to decrease the in-office confusion. Is being able to send those pictures comes in really, really handy. The other side of it is that if you can't text a photo in as a patient, we hear a lot of patients will try to send a picture not knowing that it won't go through. So do make sure that that's something that any program that's modern should have. And for AsperDental, it's included, no additional monthly fee or anything for that. It's just part of the program. Keeps your data all in one place inside of the same platform as well. So you don't have to log into anything separate. Okay, speaking of logging into separate things, do my patients need a portal or special software to fill out forms online? I think we did a very quick overview of this earlier in the screen recordings, but from what we were showing, no, they do not. There's a secured link in their email and it takes them to a place where they can fill out those forms, and it goes directly into their chart on their practice management system on AsperDental. And then chart questions. Okay. All the devices. I use iPads in the office. Can I use my iPad to do my teeth and perio charting? Yes, you can. Any device that can open up a web page, whether it's a phone, iPhone, Android, whether it's a tablet or an iPad, as long as it pulls up a web page, you'll be able to pull up your practice management software portal and do everything that you need. And that includes treatment planning and perio charting.
I just make one quick point here too, is that I think I meant to make this point earlier. So you're obviously on Wi-Fi when you're doing this, but the good news about using a browser is that for any reason your Wi-Fi goes down, you can use the data plan that you have to continue to use the program. This is something you can't do on the server software. That's really important. Or you can tether your iPhone as a hotspot and use that to drive. So this almost makes it impossible for a going down scenario. So.
Oh, speaking of, here's a question. Going down, what safeguards make my data secure in case of unforeseen events? So this is a fantastic question because we see a lot of this that practices who are server-based have a lot more data risk actually than anything on the cloud. And the reason being is that on the cloud, on server systems like Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, things like that, they have redundant cloud servers, meaning that your data is stored on different servers throughout the US. So if one of the servers goes down, your data is redundant across another one, and it's backed up every few hours. So in the way that you would back up your practice at the end of every day, maybe, instead, your data is backed up throughout the day, and there's always a current version out there. So it's even more secure than having everything patient-wise, your entire history of your practice in a physical server in the practice, because if anything happens to that server, or you spill coffee on it, anything like that, there goes your data. If you back it up on an extra hard drive, that's still a physical thing that you need to take care of. So if anything happens to that device, then there's also your data.
Right.
Oh, okay. Here's one. Can I try on my own for a few days? So yes, we do have a demo account that we would be happy to give you access to. Anyone who's interested, we just ask for about 30 to 40 minutes of your time first to set up an orientation so that we can show you where to click through and where everything is, and then you can get full reign of the software. Okay, do I need new computers? I'm using Macs and PCs. I have, and then here's the description of the computers, certain ones for processing x-rays, certain ones for doing everything else. So long story short is that no, you don't need new computers. The Dental software is it's essentially a website, like logging into your email, except instead of your email, it has your entire patient schedule and all of your chart information. So anywhere that you can open up a web page, essentially. And it doesn't matter also the version that you're on or operating system for your computer. You can keep it as up to date as you want, or you can be behind on the updates and it won't affect your ability to access the web practice management software. Does it include x-rays? Yes, pricing does. And can I see those x-rays remotely? So yes, the x-rays are a part of the system as well. They are cloud-based. They're captured locally, which means that you capture it on the computer where your sensor or your PSP or whatever capturing imaging device is plugged into. So that's happens right then and there. It's no delay. And then once the images are done, they get sent up to the cloud. That takes about 15 seconds to 45 seconds, depending on whether it's a few bite wings and PAs or whether it's a full series or a piano. And once they're up there, they're visible from any device that you have that you can log into your Dental portal in. And I'm going to call last question since we're rounding out this 45 minutes that we have from everyone. Let's see here. There are a few coming in. Can I text an x-ray to the specialist if I create a profile? Yes, you can text it to the referring party. All you want to do is make sure that you have the patient sign off on having their images being able to be transmitted to their endodontist or oral surgeon, or whoever it is, via text. But once you have that, the technology is definitely there where you can screenshot it and send it in a text message. And there are a few more questions that are slightly different variations of the ones we've answered. I think anyone, if we haven't answered your specific questions about your office setup, feel free to reach out to Ken directly. His contact information is here, and we'll be more than happy to get your answer for you or show you even more of the program if you're interested in seeing that.
Great, thank you. And thank you for sending in your questions. I've been watching them pop up one by one, and that's awesome. And we, like Tiffany said, will reach out to anybody who didn't get a question answered. And please feel free to contact me anytime via email or via cell, or contact Ask for Dental directly. And all sorts of ways that we can move forward. We can do easily do demos and spend some time with you and really sort of take an analysis of your current setup. So one of the exciting things, depending on what background you have in terms of the program, is that we also have a very unique way of getting your data and converting it, which I think is also separates us from a lot of the other people out there. So something we can talk about when we get in touch. So thank you again. I know that some of you are up late, possibly even waking up in the middle of the night. So we really appreciate that. I want to thank Tiffany for bringing her expertise in, and she's always available to answer questions as well. And we'll be sending out another notice for the up and coming paperless webinar that's coming up, and I'm sure we'll do more of these. It's a great way to introduce folks to the idea of cloud and to the technology. And obviously, if you contact us wanting a demo, then that will be a live demo that we'll be able to go through and see. So again, thank you, and we hope to hear from you. And take care.
Have a good evening, everyone.